I feel like there's such a huge benefit to going into something green and never doing it before, because you're way more optimistic than you ever should be. But that level of optimism really helps you in the early stages of something where maybe you are playing, outside of your league, right? And I think in the early days, I wasn't afraid to do.
Hey everyone, this is Rebecca at Close.io, bringing you our interview series featuring women in sales, where we find out how they grow and thrive both personally and professionally. Today in this episode, I'm speaking with Melissa Rosenthal.
Hi, I'm Melissa Rosenthal. I'm the EVP of Cheddar. My position here is running the business team and bringing new revenue to the company. Cheddar is a live post-cable network. We focus on distribution on OTT and also on social. We are reimagining what we believe the cable network will look like in the future with both distribution and content alike.
Melissa was named to Forbes' 30 Under 30 and Business Insider's 30 Most Creative People Under 30. In 2010, Melissa joined Buzzfeed, where she became a key contributor to the early success of Buzzfeed's branded content and advertising model and created the site's first ads. She went on to become Buzzfeed's Vice President of Creative Services, where she led and grew her direct team to 100 creatives, working with Fortune 500 brands, creating compelling, engaging, and social branded content. I'm super excited to delve into this career case study and, what I would call an iconic career moment that we'll get into later on. My first question for you, Melissa, what got you into creative? I kind of see a musical theme in the early roles of your career.
Yeah, I think, my dream coming out of college and during college was to be in music, in the capacity of being an A&R, creative and marketing for record labels. And all of my internships within my college days were focused on music and focused on music marketing. And during those internships and towards the end of college, I realized that what was killing the music industry was the internet, and the way that people were finding new artists, and the distribution and consumption of music was changing so rapidly, and artists weren't making money off of albums anymore. And we didn't have companies like Spotify, and there weren't very straightforward distribution systems for music. And I looked and tried to find companies that were doing innovative things within music, and there really weren't too many. So I kind of switched my focus to, well, how do I be creative in the ultimate disruptor, which was the web. And I was an early Buzzfeed user, and I kind of shifted my focus to looking at companies that I was using and sites that I was really passionate about.
It looks like your time at Buzzfeed was pretty pivotal and significant in your career, and we'll delve into that later on. How did you get the job there?
I was an active user of the site for years before I applied to be an intern there, and I loved a lot of things about it, but I was contributing to it every day. I was one of the top authors and top contributors on the site, and every day I would go on and at that point in time, they had a leaderboard for how many people, for the different people that were getting traffic to their articles, and I was constantly at the top battling the editors that worked there to kind of one-up them on the leaderboard. So when I went in for an interview, they were already pretty familiar with me and my posts and who I was. So it kind of lended itself to, well, you're already doing the work. You might as well come and intern here.
Yeah, you were like a force already. And with that, I'm gonna read off a quote that I found off of a Mashable article, and this was a quote by John Steinberg, the current CEO of Cheddar, and he said, "Melissa Rosenthal and I first worked together in the summer of 2010. I was the new president of Buzzfeed, and she was an intern. Neither of us had sold advertising. My fondest memory of this time is sitting with her side by side at a laptop, trying to figure out what an advertising pitch to a media agency should look like."
Yeah.
That is an iconic career moment right there. My first question is, how does one as an intern get to work with the president of a company like Buzzfeed? Like, what was it like collaborating with him at his seniority, his level of experience?
Yeah, I mean, John is a great person, and I think he values creative thinking and ideas, and he's not one for politics or hierarchy or kind of not listening to someone, even if they're an intern. And, at that point in time, I was on the editorial side, but what really kind of drove me was being creative. I'd always loved advertising. My dad worked in advertising, so I grew up creating experiential experiences for brands. So that was, always a part of who I was and what I love to do. And, John, when we started on the same day, and I raised my hand. I said when we wanted to figure out ways to monetize the site, I raised my hand to help think about it. And I spent a lot of time, outside of my role as an intern there editorially, thinking about how we could integrate brands into the website. And I think not having kind of this, this experience or background in media really helped me, because I wasn't inhibited by kind of the fallbacks of what people were buying and selling at that point, because what we were creating didn't exist, and anyone that had experience might have just said this won't work. So I think the fact that John and I were so green together, and I was looking for this opportunity to kind of figure out my path outside of editorial, and he wanted someone to raise their hand and help him, figure out what the business would look like. We kind of clicked, and it made a lot of sense. And our personalities very much complement each other. He's very fast paced and rigorous and smart and a visionary, and I'm very creative, and everything just sort of made a lot of sense. And while he could run the business and run the sales team, I focused on the creative, and we really just complemented each other there.
You guys have been totally recognized together as like a dynamic duo. Can you speak to managing up and how you sort of manage this collaboration where, in a way, maybe he is a mentor, but in certain contexts, like you guys are definitely equal and bringing your talents to the table. So there's that kind of dynamic.
Yeah. And I mean, it's always, it's shifted now that, of course, he always, at Buzzfeed, gave me recognition and, helped my career quite a bit, and gave me tasks that were bigger than myself at the moment, where, maybe I wasn't really equipped to be leading a creative team, but he believed in me and saw something in me and knew I could do it. But anyone else would not have given me that opportunity because I just had no experience or no background. But, I think his ability to recognize talent and take chances on people, really, is visionary in itself. And then I think our relationship as coworkers and partners in this has evolved, because creative at Buzzfeed was very different. And now I run the sales team here, and he's the president, and he's the CEO of the company. So our dynamic has shifted, but it's always balanced out, where I'm still working on a lot of the creative pieces of it. I'm selling the deals in, he's the go out in the field and get the contacts, and I'm the one that builds the relationships and helps sell these programs in and work with our clients throughout the lifetime of their partnership, and making sure that, we're executing great creative, and my team is, working really closely, and he believes in me, and he believes in my vision for how things should run. And, he let me structure the team here very differently. And even though I had no experience in sales, he recognized that I could probably do this, and gave me the opportunity to structure my own, partnerships team in the way that I had the vision for it, even though the conventional wisdom said that the way that I was structuring it wouldn't work. So, he's put a lot of trust in me, and that's given me enough pressure to make it happen, and be a really great support system.
Well, he's made an amazing bet. I mean, to put your trust in someone so talented and driven as you, I mean, you can't really go wrong with that. So speaking into, not having really much of a sales background, and now you lead the sales team here.
Yep.
When you first started out how were you able to figure out the way to develop mutually beneficial brand partnerships? You were running hundreds of programs in a single year with brands like GE, American Express, JetBlue, Samsung. And then also with that, a lot of companies that are doing sort of enterprise sales when they're just up and coming, they face the hurdle that they're still new and they're still a young brand. They're trying to connect and engage with brands that are not out of their league, but just way more influential.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think it's, I feel like there's such a huge benefit to going into something green and never doing it before, because you're way more optimistic than you ever should be. But that level of optimism really helps you in the early stages of something where maybe you are playing, outside of your league, right? And I think in the early days, I wasn't afraid to do, or, I wasn't afraid to outreach to these Fortune 500 brands and say, why aren't you working with us? Our product is amazing. And I believed in the product, and the passion that I had for the product, I think lended itself to the fact that we were able to develop some of these really, high level partnerships so early on, even when we hadn't proven ourselves and we didn't have the scale or the reach that we have now. It takes a few people that sign on and believe in you the way that John believed in me, and the way that, I believed in Buzzfeed. And I think, going into it with real experience and actually selling deals, and B, feeling very strongly about the product we were building, and C, also knowing that all it takes is a few people to try, and a few people to, commit, and you build lifetime partnerships with people that, grow stronger. And then when you are, doing really well, you reward them for signing on early, and it kind of grows from there.
Has your sales philosophy changed at all, or perhaps have you seen more people in your space adapt the new philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, so my sales philosophy is really, the product sells itself, and it should sell itself, and you should hire people who are focused on understanding the core product, understanding, all of the intricacies of what the company does and what you're selling, having a creative minded, presence in what they're selling, and then being able to manage the accounts, and being able to, deeply understand what's working, what's not working, and iterate from there. So, when I structured this, it was based on some of my experience in the past, where I was running a creative team, and, I saw some sort of misalignments between people that were selling, what I was building, and how they were articulating that in market, and the understanding. And I wanted to create a team that had this really deep alignment with both the company, and then, they were held accountable for what they were selling. I think that creates a stronger team. I think, it creates a stronger bond with your partners, where they feel like they have a real representative on the side of the, the brand, the publisher that they're working with, or the media company that they're working with, where like that person understands them, and they're not just being kind of passed from person to person. It's a relationship focused industry. And, the two most important things for us are, A, relationships, B, a great product, and then also, being really client focused and client service oriented.
How were you able to implement a program like that? Because a lot of sales managers use metrics, very quantitative KPIs to hold their sales reps accountable, but then some, possibly you would say lesser experienced types, might really focus just on the metrics, and not, so the quantity of conversations and not necessarily the quality of that.
Right.
How are you able to enforce that? Or would you say the program structure, that is what it is in and of itself?
Yeah, I mean, listen, like if we did 11 million last year in our first year of really selling. And that's with a team, thank you, with a team that was 3 people. And that's 3 people across account management, sales planning, media, integration. So, a company that would be doing $11 million and have 3 sellers would have, possibly 9 other people working on those accounts full time. So what we could do with 11 people, or what other companies did with 11 people, we could do with 3. And that's sort of the mentality that we have as a company. We're building, a 16-hour linear cable network, or 2 networks with 130 people, and not 5,000. So being lean is core to our mission. It's less impressive to do the revenue that we did with 10 people. And that's sort of our motto. And the way that we're able to do that is, I think you need to, when you're structured the way that we're structured, the goal is to have less churn. And it's not about bringing in 25 deals that generate $11 million. We'd be perfectly happy if we had 3 partners that generated $11 million. And I think as you grow, those partners grow with you. And of course you bring on new advertisers, but it's just not worth it for us to, work with a partner for 2 weeks and then have them never come back and never renew with us. That's just not the business we're building. Those aren't the type of relationships we want to be building. So we ask a high minimum to commit with us, and we kill it. We crawl over glass to like make our partners happy. And that's sort of why the structure and the quality and the quantity of the deals kind of levels out across what we're doing, and how we're able to bring in so much revenue with, the people that we have in that kind of capacity.
I love that this is coming from you, because on paper, maybe, your company looks different from Close.io or like software startups like ours, but Stelly is always a huge advocate of the lean approach with people, and especially with sales.
Yeah.
And people like to rush to throwing people at, the problem, but that's where you run into these things.
Yeah. Throwing people at the problem is just, you're going to feel it. Like at some point you're going to have redundancy within roles. You're going to have, you're going to be bloated, and you're going to have people that are going to coast. And here people are much more held much more responsible for bringing in more business. But it's just it's a long-term scalable solution. Whereas throwing people at the problem and then also just counting on deals that are going to churn, it's just, to me, that was never the answer.
Right. And you also speak to this in the article that you wrote titled How to Sell Native in a New and Better Way, which we'll link to in the show notes. You also mentioned that the key is talent and hiring the right people. So,
sure.
I know that you guys have such a core team, but what really stands out to you in those few very special people? What innate qualities, talents, abilities, traits do they have?
Yeah, hiring for my team is not easy, which I think when I decided to structure the team this way, I knew it wouldn't be. A lot of people ask me, well, who are you going to hire for this role? And you find a lot of like traditional salespeople, they don't want to get their hands dirty. Like the minute that you tell them that they're going to need to manage an account and do the creative on the account and create their own media plan, they freak out and they're like, absolutely not. Like, I want to sell a deal and move on. So you weed a lot of people out that way by just telling them the nature of the role. But what I'm looking for is this hybrid unicorn, because it really does involve a level of creativity that you need to have. Being able to be self-sufficient and relying on yourself. We have a very collaborative team, but there's a lot of responsibility on the individual to do things. I'm looking for someone that is client service focused, has great account management skills, can build really strong relationships, but the relationships aren't built on taking them out to $10,000 dinners. They're built on solving their problems and making sure that the program is working for them and iterating and doing great creative work. It's not buying them a pair of jeans, which, had traditionally been a big part of sales relationships. It's like, how much money can you spend on your clients to get them to spend with you? And that's just really not the approach we want to take. We want people to be buying us because they see value in the product and they see value in the partners that the partnership that we offer. That
is really excellent, Melissa, and I love it. I can totally see why Stelly calls you a good friend. Let's say that. And I also loved your talk at the 15 Seconds conference. And I loved how you delivered the presentation. I think it was very sort of, here's the data, and the tonality was just very calm, confident, but a lot of conviction and strength. And, I kind of stepped away from that thinking to myself, like, Cheddar is taking on some really entrenched incumbents in your space. And, with everything that you've accomplished, you're still very young and very early in your career. Like, there's an element to this about risk-taking and being very bold, which you certainly are and capable of doing so. Can you speak to that? Imagine that this is somebody who is looking to reinvent an industry that, is kind of very entrenched and looking to disrupt that. How can they sort of take that conviction and download it into themselves and their vision and journey?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because you're at a company this size and being able to take on this risk. And, when John came to me with the idea and said, build this with me. It was nothing. It was an idea. And I said, this is amazing. I think there's something here. Who are the competitors? And then we discussed the competitors, who were CNBC and Fox Business going after 67 to 69-year-olds. And I said, well, why can't they build this? And why can't they, in 2 months when they realize we're doing this, how won't they just kill us? And, he said they could, but they won't, because they won't be able to move fast enough. And, I think there's this, he was absolutely correct, because 2.5 years later, they still haven't tried. And I think there's a level of denial that cord cutting was a trend, and something that was not going to achieve mainstream kind of notoriety, and that it would be phased out. There was an article today that I think the boss of ESPN called cord cutters flat earthers, and like, which is just like mind blowing. And now that, by 2020, there are going to be 48 million households in the US without cable. I'm sure he's reevaluating how smart it was to make that statement. But, I think it's just, there were so many people that were so comfortable at the top, making so many millions of dollars and just coasting, that, a new entrant into the ecosystem didn't phase them. And before you know it, we have a rigor, and we're not afraid to take risks, and there's no blueprint, and we move very quickly. And I think that helps you achieve success. Like, if you're able to minimize the red tape that you have internally to be able to get something done, and you take opportunities, and you sort of leave no stone unturned when it comes to things that come your way, eventually you're going to succeed. It's really just not being afraid and taking the no's and making them make you stronger. You just get so many no's that, like, eventually you're going to get a yes. And out of that yes, you're going to get more yeses. And
like sales.
Yeah, just like sales. And like, that's the way that we view the growth of the company. Like, when we tried to get on Sling immediately, they said no. And we kept building our content. We kept making it incredible. And finally we got on Sling, and, then we got on Philo, and then we got on Fubo, and then finally we're on YouTube TV and Hulu. And, it's just the way that things work. And once they can't ignore you, they can't ignore you. And I think it's just like, to me, it's so mind blowing how far we've come in 2.5 years, and how we are able to achieve this. But we've hired such a great team at the company, and people that are unafraid to take risks, who have come from maybe these incumbent networks, where they're like, these people are dinosaurs, and their business is going to die, and they don't care. And I think that if you can insert a level of curiosity and risk taking, and cut the big company bureaucracy from your your method to success, you're going to see some real gains. But a lot of these companies are just too big to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they're entrenched makes it daunting, but they're also entrenched in their ideologies or worldviews.
I mean, CNBC ignored us for a long time, and we had a set next to them on the New York Stock Exchange floor, and we still do. And they brushed us aside, and they said, oh, that's Cheddar, weird little Cheddar. And then all of a sudden, little Cheddar started taking their big guests. And they said that they would blacklist the guest from their network if they went on Cheddar. And they started punching down at us. And I think that was the moment that we realized that we were really onto something, when
you guys are hot. That means
when the major player in the industry and the incumbent is so afraid of you that they need to punch down, like, it means we're winning. And so, we just kept moving faster and faster after that.
Again, I just loved how your presentation, laying out the case for this, just came from a place of strength, but very calm, and what we would call here at Closeo friendly strength. We're going to do a short little segment right now where we're going to emulate one of my favorite shows on YouTube, Hot Wings, hosted by Sean Evans. Give us 2 or 3 sentences, 3 pictures on your Instagram. So first one is you reflecting on the last 2 years at Cheddar, basically saying that you guys are now doing 8 hours of live content, working with amazing brands, part of every skinny bundle in the US, and basically thanking John Steinberg for this opportunity. And he comments saying, I quote, "It never would have happened without you. Thank you for joining and making the journey happen."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Do you want me to caption that? I think yeah, I mean,
I mean, you're already kind of speechless. I can.
Yeah, it's really incredible. Like, we started the company 2.5 years ago, and we were broadcasting on a phone. We were broadcasting an hour a day on the phone. And the fact that we've been able to build something so incredible and so big in 2.5 years is just like, anything is possible. And your life can change so dramatically in such a short period of time when you work hard at something. And it's certainly not always easy. It's a lot of things that you need to overcome, and a lot of no's, again, that you need to take and find strength to get up the next day and just go in and forget about the failures that you had the previous day. But it really is just like, it is incredible. And I wake up every day really thankful that I have this opportunity, and I'm able to transform an industry and a landscape again, because I think that there's so much disruption, and every single industry is so ripe for disruption that to be a part of it is really, really special.
Amazing. Picture number 2, Mother's Day with Mom, who looks like was also in the creative industry. Looks like she's a photographer.
Yes. My mom was a graphic designer all her life. And then she started taking up photography as a hobby. And now she does it, professionally, full time. And yeah, my mom is a big inspiration for me. She, as a child, let me do a lot and explore a lot of things, and never told me you have to be this or that, or, it wasn't, you have to be a doctor or a lawyer. It was playing to your strengths and letting you explore all of the things and all of the options that were out there, and letting me come to my own decision on what I should be doing, and providing that kind of unconditional love and support to what I wanted to be doing, because I never sort of fit in the box of doing really, really well in school. I was always more creative than I felt like school kind of put me in this box of having to conform, and I didn't really like that. But she supported me throughout and allowed me to do all these really, cool things, and take internships when I was young, and traveled to the city to work, for my favorite record label when I was in high school. So yeah, I mean, I think it's her being a creative person and understanding that really did help, because there weren't these expectations that I had to do X or Y. I could do whatever I wanted to, and I was capable of a lot. And yeah, huge support in my life.
What advice has she given you from a career perspective, or just being, as a woman and a young woman, doing it all?
Yeah, I mean, she
going after it.
Just always reinforces that I can do anything I want, and don't let people tell me no. And I don't let people tell me no.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just, you have to understand that you're really just capable of anything that you put your mind to. And she constantly is so proud of like what I've accomplished, and that gives me strength and support to just push it further, and be as successful as I can be, and be a good person, and be empathetic. And some of the qualities that some people might find to be weak are actually strengths. And I think that's a big thing that she's always kind of hammered in, that you can be a caring, empathetic, strong leader, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Third picture, meeting Terry Crews. What was that like?
Yeah. Terry's an amazing person with such an amazing story.
Yeah.
And yeah, spending time with him was really incredible. He's one of a kind, and he has such a strong personality, but he's so caring, and willing to listen to people's stories. And yeah, he's an amazing human being. And spending time with someone like that is always, of course, you're a little starstruck, but he's just so down to earth, and really, I think what happened to him gave him this whole new perspective on life, and on what people struggle with daily. And he's become such an amazing advocate for women, and for multiple communities. And yeah, he's amazing, an amazing person. So it's always a privilege to be in the room with someone like that, and spend time with someone like that.
Was he a guest on the show, or was it an event that Cheddar
was we have a CMO advisory council twice a year for some of our biggest partners, and Terry was kind enough to we always like to inspire them with things outside of just marketing. Yeah. So Terry was kind enough to come in and tell his story, and sort of how his life had changed. And man, his story is just, from sports to being down and out to acting to the downfalls. He's been through so much. And it was, just really inspiring for, I think, everyone in the room.
Yeah. I love cross-discipline knowledge sharing because
Yeah.
it shows you unique perspectives that all seem to tie together so well at the end of the day. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Before we wrap up our interview, Melissa, is there anything that I haven't asked you that, you might want to leave with our audience and share with them?
I think, I think the whole notion of not having a blueprint and not knowing what to do and not always having the answer makes you stronger, because you have to really think about what that could be. I've always found that when I have no idea, I always come up with the best ideas, rather than sort of just, oh, well, this is the way that things have been done and this is how you should do them. We had no ad model at Buzzfeed and we created it. We had no business at Cheddar and we created it. We had no revenue at Cheddar and we figured that out. And I think it's just like when something just doesn't exist, it's so limitless that it can be constraining, but it can also be the most inspiring part of what you do. And, I think it's forming the right team, having the right support. And once you put the right people in the room and you kind of give them, no restrictions, no boundaries, they thrive, and they get excited. So it's finding those people and then putting them in situations where they feel like they can really make a difference and have an impact. And at the end of the day, those are the people that we're hiring, the people that really that see the change in the industry happening and aren't afraid to go, head first in changing it.
That is honestly really emboldening, but also reassuring at the same time. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank
and
you.
With your work at BuzzFeed and at Cheddar, you've been a part of so many lives. I mean, BuzzFeed, I think, has an unaided brand recognition among so many millennials, almost in a way defined our culture and our generation.
Yeah. And I guess one more thing, BuzzFeed didn't go from being it didn't go to being a brand name recognized in every home. When you talk to someone on the street, they've heard of it overnight. And I think that going from that point in my career to then Cheddar at a new company where no one had heard of us, was really humbling, because you sort of forget that there's this entire journey that you go on to get to where you were. So, it's never take anything for granted. And even when the wind is at your back, there are more things to accomplish. And, you really should take pride in where you are and stop and reflect and then keep going. But, you can often forget, and I did when I left, that, it took a long time to build what we built. And it's a lot of work, but, we're doing it again, and we're feeling that success, and it's great. But it's always important to kind of take a step back and humble yourself and realize that, realize all the hard work that it takes to get to where you are.
I really appreciate you sharing this story, Melissa, because a lot of us just don't even remember BuzzFeed not being a household name. And so we all, implicitly do sort of assume that, they just always had it going on and they just exploded overnight. And, someone might look at your trajectory and think, well, she's always been closing deals. She came from a sales background and knew what she was doing, from day one. But now we know that it was your fearlessness that actually made you so powerful and a force to be reckoned with. Where can people find you and connect with you?
You can find me very easily across the internet. I'm active on Twitter. Find me on LinkedIn. I am active on Instagram, Facebook. You can connect with me everywhere. I'm pretty easy to find.
Perfect. Thanks so much for being here, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, did you enjoy this episode? I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. If you have questions that you'd like our guests to answer, or if you know of a woman in sales that we should feature, email me, Rebecca@close.io. That's with 1 B and 2 C's. And if you enjoyed this episode, got value out of it, got inspired, share it with a friend. There's a link in the description where you can also find show notes. And you can follow this series by subscribing to Close.io's YouTube channel, iTunes, SoundCloud, and various other podcast apps that you might already use. See you guys on the next one.